All right, welcome everybody. How's everyone doing today? My name is Yuji Higashi, and I am the co-founder of PreSales Collective. And today we have a very special presenter here to share his experience and insight on this incredible topic that I think is super important for everybody in pre-sales. And it's the critical role that pre-sales professionals play in customer experience. We all know that customer experience is the most important thing to focus on as anybody that's in a customer-facing role, and especially in a pre-sales role. And so Aditya is going to walk us through with his experience how pre-sales folks can continue to do that in a really good way. So with that, I want to introduce Aditya. You want to introduce yourself, actually?
Absolutely. Thank you, Yuji. And hello, everyone. I'm really excited to be part of covering this topic on customer experience alongside you, Yuji. And major part of my experience actually spans across roles that are primarily customer facing. And I'm currently with RFPIO heading the pre-sales function. For some of you who are unaware, RFPIO is industry's first AI-enabled response management platform. But a little background story to my presence here. So I first got acquainted to Yuji and the pre-sales collective through a discussion on LinkedIn about proof of concepts. And my point of contention was around transforming customer experience through POC engagements that essentially lead to better conversion. So, I mean, it's surreal to visualize where we are right now from that point in the past. And essentially, we're talking about the same topic here. It's a great journey from what pre-sales collective started as 2 members from where we are right now. So I'm really thrilled and honored to be part of this great initiative. And let's get started with today's topic, Yuji.
Sounds good. Let's get into it.
Absolutely. So before I dive deep into today's topic, on the webinar, first, I wanted to share a quick glimpse on what we're covering today and the things you can take away from today's session. So we have seen multiple topics on online communities that talk about effective time management, including pre-sales collective, right? So the only resource probably which is available equally to everyone is time, and nothing else is fairly or evenly split. So the entire customer experience kind of clings on to how effectively you allocate your time and engage with your prospects. The more time you get, you can effectively repurpose that time to come up with creative ways to personalize and engage with your prospects. And this is something which you need to focus on to save enough time that you will need framework models, process design that actually would serve as foundations for today's session. In essence, the whole subject of today's topic is focused specifically on the critical stages of a deal in which pre-sales get involved, starting from the discovery, the demo, the tech win, and the final feedback. This will also cover some of the best practices for each stage built on a solid operating framework, which I'll cover later on the slides. And that will help you to create customer delight, trust, leading to a purchase decision, and later on, increasing customer lifetime value. These are the 4 broad topics which we'll cover through the rest of the slides which you're going to see. And I think you'll have a ton of takeaways from the topic which you're going to cover today. So just to give a quick lens of customer experience, it is an often talked about topic from a service standpoint after a sale is done. And when browsing about this content, a particular PwC report that caught my eye was talking about customer experience during the buying process, essentially, and how it has effectively played a vital role in influencing purchase decisions. While that particular report was more of industry agnostic, this webinar is going to focus on how that is specific to B2B software space, right? So some of the takeaways from the PwC report was what truly makes a great customer experience. The major aspect was not speed, convenience, consistency, and friendliness, but the focus was on human touch. And that kind of brings us to the question on why companies invest in sales and pre-sales touchpoints. Company may start with a product-led sales approach to free trials, but eventually they realize that they can't scale effectively without sales and pre-sales touchpoints. The contention here is the simple product that does the job with excellent customer experience during the evaluation process will have more conversions than a greater product with a terrible customer experience. So the customer experience during an evaluation process is not just visualizing your product fitment very clearly, but it's also a measure of your company's credibility and values. So the first step here is to create the right perception, because that is essentially something which dictates what reality you see and live in, and plays a huge influence on your decision-making process. So we'll cover what approach to follow to create the right perception, because it's critical and important to lure the prospect in the right direction. Each member from the prospect side might actually form or construe different perceptions on the onset of evaluation. And through understanding them, the idea is to bring at least the main influences to a common ground by articulating the right value about your product and company. The final step is to use the positive perception you created and the value which you talk about your product and the company to strengthen trust and convert the prospect to a loyal customer. So throughout the course of the slides, you'll see how this translates into. And these three are the main topics which we'll cover in broad depth to make sure that you get the right understanding of what are the different stages across which you apply each of these aspects seamlessly.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it, Aditya. I think that so much of why companies choose to work with a specific vendor is the people, right? And it's up to the people and the pre-sales folks specifically to provide that really exceptional customer experience. And I think that's what a lot of the data shows. And so we're really excited to kind of dive in. I'd be curious from the audience, just to hear from you, what are some thoughts you have about why customer experience in particular is so important? I'd love to just have you drop it in the chat, and we'll shout some answers out as they come through. But in the meantime, we'll keep going.
Sure, Yuji. Yeah, let's proceed ahead. And one of the things which we do, and we welcome some of the questions which may come in right now, but before we started on this topic and did this webinar to understand what all the pre-sales professionals say about customer experience, we did a short survey a few weeks back with a set of 4 to 5 questions. The result did present some gaps, which I hope to fulfill through the content I got to share today. But first, initially, I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to fill the survey on customer experience. Evidently, the first statistic represents the obvious, and customer trust is the key to better conversions and sustained business existence. So this is something which is critical and is going to be part of today's topic as well. The premise of today's content is actually intrinsically tied to the second and third statistic, which essentially talks about access to up-to-date information and insights into what works and what doesn't. So some of you on the webinar regularly follow PreSales Collective content might wonder what RFPIO has to do with customer experience and this webinar. But providing up-to-date information through an end-to-end automation model is the heart of RFPIO's offerings. And giving back time is one of their core values. And time is something which we spoke about earlier, being a crucial part in making sure you deliver excellent customer experience. Through the course of the webinar, you will see how this survey statistic, the relevance of RFPIO here, and customer experience all ties together to deliver great customer experience. Firstly, when you see the slide, the first impression you might get is this is probably be the Pareto principle, but this rule here is not actually the Pareto principle. Before I talk about this model in depth, the small disclaimer here is this a model which I propose works better for the pre-sales functions in probably startup and scale-up stages. Larger companies may already have set processes defined based on data collected over years, but realistically becomes difficult to apply at this point. But on the whole, it could work well for larger companies too. The term ROE here represents rules of engagement, and probably writing that down in full would have made the slide heavy and not created a lot of curiosity. So a bigger part of the pre-sales SE works goes in collaborating and coordinating with multiple teams, mainly sales and product, and in certain cases, we interact with marketing too. Every organization's revenue operating model actually requires these multiple teams, be it sales, marketing, product, and pre-sales, working in tandem to acquire new business. Well, having a well-laid-out process with helping coordinate between these teams, aka ROE, ensures clean handoffs and fixates the stages of involvement for each team, the overall lead to ledger flow from where an initial lead comes in till the point where the contract is signed. But a rigidity in process can actually affect the customer experience. So an organization or a function that mandates the adoption of such process essentially is to streamline operations and also to ensure that the other downstream and upstream teams are not overworked and taken for a ride. Essentially, this is where the 80-20 rule applies and says the rules of engagement between the teams will have a streamlined process, but there is a 20% wiggle room or flexibility to personalize the customer buying journey and exceptions that will only pertain, 20% exceptions that only pertain to primary customer needs. There needs to be a defined umbrella for scenarios on the 20% too, but this model gives you enough data to clearly understand what works and what doesn't. And when there are repeated encounters of the same scenarios or exceptions, and that scenario is standardized and moves back to the 80% as a regular process added to the rules of engagement. So coming back to this topic, a wise thought actually came into my mind, based on which I formulated this rule, is the process in a scale-up company is more like a guitar string. And if it is too tight, the quality of music is not that great. And if it is too loose, you cannot make any music at all. So this got me thinking and formulating this model, and you'll see it getting consistently applied in the overall customer buying journey.
Yeah, I love that, Aditya, that analogy of the process to the guitar string, and you really need that balance of tension to make it work. It can't be too rigid, but it also can't be too loose. There really needs to be a balance. So I really love that analogy. Let me ask the audience, like, what other teams might be engaged here as part of the customer lifecycle and part of the customer experience? Let's see what you have in the chat. Looks like we have a few suggestions. Engineering, certainly product is on here, but also engineering, and then also security is probably another good example of a team that might be involved to help provide a customer experience. So
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, good examples. We'll keep them coming, but we'll keep rolling here. Next slide.
Sure. Absolutely, Yuji. And I think by the time an organization does establish a pre-sales function, you'll probably have some concrete team in marketing, sales, and product as well. Maybe not product, at least engineering would be established too by the time you have pre-sales. And in certain organization, at least in the startup stage, in some cases, product does a combination of pre-sales work too. So essentially, at that stage, you have concrete functions already established, and pre-sales as such would need coordination between various teams to actually deliver the great experience.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
The first aspect on the main point of today's topic is creating the right perception at the initial stage, and creating the strong positive perception during your first touch point. It's kind of equivalent to getting a welcome drink on a flight journey, because this is something where the prospect feels they can feel relaxed and they know that the overall journey is going to be pleasant. So this is how the 80-20 rules specifically applies. So relationship between either sales and pre-sales, or maybe marketing and pre-sales, depending on where their SDR and BDR teams roll up to. So essentially the BDRs and SDR team have their outbound templates and methods to reach out, and the process is well oiled and set up already, but more from a pre-sales standpoint, based on past customer interactions and data, if you're able to find some common use cases for prospects coming from a certain industry segment, or coming from a certain region, you're able to find some potential use cases. That is something which you can request the SDR to personalize in their email templates in terms of reaching out outbound, or if the leads are coming in through inbound, if there's a question that can be asked on the call, the prospect acknowledges that they have this problem or use case. This is something which the BDR can inform the pre-sales and sales, and you have the ability to get involved earlier on the sales process, and also has the ability to personalize the experience from the beginning. So if this is going to be a regularly occurring scenario, pre-sales can effectively enable sales to give the prospect that experience and repurpose pre-sales time on new scenarios which they might encounter further down the line. So this type of interaction is absolutely important to maintain consistency across multiple teams, which we'll cover on the next slide, going more in detail. So while we understand that creating the right perception is important, on this slide, we'll specifically talk about how to create the right perception. Remember that from a customer perspective, experience is more seamless. There is an expectation of consistency across multiple channels, but different internal owners of parts of their experience can actually cause inconsistency, right? You have marketing, sales, and pre-sales, and later on you have the post-sales teams as well. So having a longitudinal view of the total experience is needed to actually spot inconsistency in various layers. There's broadly three steps to ensure that you're able to create the right perception. And step one of this is to ensure that research on the company, research on their business model, their values, and funding if it is applicable. And essential is to go through the SGR AE notes and listen to existing call recordings starting from the first touch point. The first discussion should be consistent with the marketing messaging, being in sync with earlier communication with the prospect by going through all the list of activities from AEs and SDRs, and also talk to them to ensure that you're on the same page. This is something which I recommend. It's better to automate this as much as possible using your CRM and probably using few other sales enablement tools so that the respective SEs are equipped with all the details even before the discovery starts. Coming from the stage when having all these inputs, second stage is discovery, step 2, where the first step is to summarize what you have learned from the upstream teams and ask the prospects if you have actually missed out anything, and also acknowledge their effort in the buying process so far, and also talk about the multiple touch points they have been patient so far. At this point, you're actually creating a great perception, which is the first step in establishing trust. The prospect is actually in a position to reveal some details because essentially he or she views you as their advisor in their buying process. The next ask is to go ahead and find out any open-ended questions to unearth details with the core outcome of personalizing your demo and the POC engagement with the prospect. This can range from any core trigger points when the prospect started looking out for a tool and also understanding their standard buying process and also the possible audience involved during the entire journey of evaluation. It is necessary to document all the discovery details so that you move on to step 3, which is critical to make sure and move to the next stage. So the outcome of the first 2 stages will give rise to 3 critical data points to personalize your engagement, take the customer experience to the next level. From the research data, you'll be able to gather the company details, their industry, segment, the persona role, time zone, and culture. The sales and discovery call details gives you details on their tone, intent, their urgency, problems, specific features, success criteria, and also the possible time and effort they are willing to put into the overall evaluation. Combining these two and also combining past data and patterns from the above, what you get as outcome is you'll be able to correlate and adjust the buyer journey, understand any cultural nuances specific to the buyer workflow, add specific features to demonstrate which have worked well in the past and the ones that are specific to the prospect's locale as well. So the outcome of these 3 steps will help you to create a personalized engagement plan for the prospect, which will be the first pivotal step in ensuring a great experience for the prospect. This is something I'll cover on the next slide.
Yeah, it's a really great points, Aditya, about creating a personalized engagement or personalized experience for the customer. I think, another thing that comes to mind for me is information handoff between the different roles and functions that play a part in providing that customer experience. And in my experience, one way to provide a really bad customer experience is to have the SDR and the AE, the SC, and the CSM all ask the customer the same exact question or set of questions, like it's the first time they're asking it. And so I think the better our teams can do and have the system processized so that we are able to process or pass that information from role to role to role, the better off we'll be. I think that's always the kind of big pet peeve of mine is different teams asking the customer over and over again, what systems they use and things like that. So we really get great call out here, great points that you're making.
Right. No, I mean, like the definite thing is if you're kind of asking the same questions, the prospect just says, is this something which didn't I answer on the previous call? Are you kind of backing in for the other salesperson? Then that's the point where you realize that either you or your team has not done your research and work in guiding the prospect through the buyer journey. So that's kind of going to be a bad customer experience. Right.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. So the other aspect when it comes to documenting all the aspects from your discovery is creating this personalized engagement plan. And to depict this in the right way, you have depict the pre-sales involvement in the overall journey into 3 specific stages. And the discovery is 1, the solutioning is the 2nd, and the feedback is the 3rd stage. The discovery will tie back to perception, and solutioning will be tying back to the demo and the follow-up emails after that. And the feedback is more like towards the end of either your POC or either a string of demos which you have given. So the agreed start date and end date actually marks the total number of solutioning days where you have actually served the customer. Irrespective of any scenarios, whether it's going to be a custom demo, it's going to be a string of demos, it's POCs, the engagement plan is extremely critical or crucial for capturing and communicating 3 main aspects. The first one is capturing the core buyer evaluation cycle. When I say it's a core evaluation buying cycle of the prospect, it gives us insight into the number of days for a prospective account with the deal value say X, which has ABC firmographics with Y number of audience, for whom the features and topics are actually applicable. That insight you'll be able to derive through this particular engagement plan. And also you're clearly giving them what to expect, when to expect, and how much effort is needed. And they know that this is customized based on your earlier conversations with them. The third key aspect is very important is you're getting commitment for the complete evaluation, or you also get clear signals on their intent based on when they schedule these calls with you. When you see the engagement plan depicted on the screen here, it has clear time slots on various features and topics you're going to present to them. So having this, you can get their complete commitment, or also you can have these added as links so that they can schedule calls with you later. My recommendation is to automate this using a call scheduling application. But if your company does follow a mutual action plan, combine the role of the SE cycle or the solutioning cycle along with the map, mutual action plan. Sharing too many documents might overwhelm the prospect, so it is better to combine this into a single artifact and share it with the prospect.
Yeah, I love this because it's super important to just manage expectations with the customer and also make sure that everybody's aligned on what the scope is, what needs to happen, what the timeline is that we're working against. At Outreach, we had a very similar setup where the SC owned a portion of that map or that mutual action plan. It's the usually the section that focuses on the technical validation activities. But nonetheless, we were big on mutual action plans. So I love this point.
Absolutely, and I think it actually comes with scale. I think initially, if you just have one SE or two SEs, it might be difficult to put in that effort. But if you do have, when you start scaling, I think it becomes really critical to make sure you have a track, you have a tab on things, and also have a tab on the overall cycle of where you are on the prospecting stage of that particular buyer journey. So yep. I think it's pretty important too. Yeah, we also have some tools in the market too for creating this mutual action plan and getting the right intent and signals based on what activity the prospects do on the mutual action plan. So that's pretty interesting to watch out too.
Yeah.
So the other second key aspect when it comes to the buyer journey and the evaluation lifecycle is understanding the audience and articulating the right value. So in software selling, this is probably the hardest part because this is akin to a touring stand-up comedy and winning the hearts of people in different locations through live performances, talking about their cultural flaws. The reason I'm giving this analogy is it's actually akin to convincing your prospect to buy your tool and also directly pointing out their inconsistencies in the current process. So how the 80-20 rule kind of permeates down here and helps you personalize the journey is how sales and pre-sales engage with the prospect during the different stages of the buyer journey. So during the engagement, and, kind of you've given a demo and some questions, follow-up questions from the prospect, the emails on those specific functional queries or appropriate follow-ups when there is some silence from the prospect's end are regular. But the clear rule is to have pre-sales respond to any functional or technical queries. Sometimes follow-ups are usually taken care of by sales. And this can be worked upon. I would say this better to work upon this on a case-by-case basis because in certain cases, when the pre-sales member has built a stronger relationship on the overall solutioning cycle or the evaluation days, they might have better rapport and maybe they might get better responses when they send out an email and follow up with them. And while they're probably responding to a few functional queries with one set of audience, it's better to have a single point of contact to maintain consistent communication during the solutioning stage of evaluation. So pre-sales can send these follow-ups to make sure that the overall communication with the prospect is consistent and all of us are on the same page too. This is something that can be worked upon and communicated with the salesperson. And this is the wiggle room which you can apply to make sure they have a more seamless experience through the solutioning life cycle or the evaluation cycle. So let's dive into the three critical stages to kind of personalize your buyer journey. And this is mainly by articulating value of your product and the company. So essentially there are three steps in this part too. And the first step is to see how you can use the discovery, the past and the research data which you do. And that should give you enough insight into the current persona involved till this point in the evaluation. But mostly for the demo or the proof of concepts, custom demos which you do, the key member would also want to add additional members and testers to the equation. This is vitally true for POCs in most scenarios. Getting to know about the additional audience through discovery and also researching about them through LinkedIn will give you enough data. And a day before the demo, or even a couple of hours before the demo, you can resend the personalized engagement plan to communicate what they could expect and also mention the name of the additional members or the additional testers and ask them if they would like to see something specific in the list or apart from it. So the persona 360, which we are talking about on the slide, is essentially a combination of the persona role, their work location, their industry segment, their culture, their time zones, and also another additional aspect which I thought was important is probably what generation they belong to, whether it's Gen X, Gen Y, or Gen Z. Probably you might have to tailor your talk track based on what type of generation audience you're going to engage with during the demo and the next part of the cycle as well. Step two here is to maintain different demo models and name it based on your convenience. When I talk specifically about demo models, it is something that is picked based on the commonality of different people in the audience and their importance in this evaluation. So this is something you can consult and work with sales and kind of rehearse it before you finalize your demo model. Each demo model effectively differs on three aspects. One is how you're going to manage your talk track and flow, and the order of features which you're going to talk on today's call, and also the time allocated for this particular call. And this persona 360 should also give you enough insights into structuring and timing your demo well and inserting Q&As at the right places. The demo requires you to be completely thorough and requires your navigational aesthetics to be right without any surprises. And you as a trusted advisor can educate the new audience and make the existing audience associate all the problem statement which you communicated earlier with the features and the success criteria which you walked through. Last step towards this, after you've done this is the point you've communicated value and probably the some of the audience are convinced that this might be a right fit. The additional effort is, apart from presenting a great demo, is to find out all the additional people in the audience who are actually important to this evaluation and providing them with the best experience to gain trust and move the deal in a positive direction. So this is a critical point to ensure that the next stage and the next set of relationship is established. So after the you do the first demo and you engage with the audience from the prospect side, you can actually send them a success criteria checklist of sort to kind of score and compare features against some of their key pain points, which they mentioned during discovery. And in some cases, it might also serve useful if you're up against a competitor. Any activity, if they continue to do on this checklist, are only stronger signals on their intent to buy and seriously proceed with the evaluation. In certain cases, you could ensure this can be shared in the form of a Google Sheet or it can be shared via a tool. So any actions they make on scoring this will give you very strong signals on which features they're looking at, what might be their area of interest, etc. And accordingly, you can tailor your emails too. However, I would say this is not mandatory if the prospect already has a standard process for evaluation, or maybe they don't have that formal process for evaluation. You can feel free to respect that and only suggest best practices as a trusted advisor. Ensure that you're the one who's leading the whole evaluation at any point. So this is something definitely is important to make sure that you're on the same page and map the problem statement with the necessary success criteria. The third aspect is critical to, you've done the discovery, you've done the demo, and the audience is convinced with what value the product brings in. And using those two aspects, how you develop trust. Trust is a critical factor in earning the business. So this point brings me an analogy where it talks about when you board a bus or a train, essentially we trust the vehicle takes us to the right destination because one, the journey is short, and two, the route and destination is actually defined. The software buying journey is much longer, and especially in SaaS, you will need to consistently deliver incremental value. The software buying journey is similar to the journey in a bus or a train, and the buying process is similar to the route which you go and the destination, which is essentially value. In most cases, it is incremental value which you need to deliver on a consistent basis. So you need to find innovative ways to engage and improve the experience, which is critical to the buying journey, and also the foundation, which serves as the foundation for future loyalty as well. Again, in this aspect, this key aspect, how the 80-20 rule specifically applies is the nature of agreed commitment between product and pre-sales. Earlier during the demo, we saw how product and sales can engage, and during the discovery, we saw how how pre-sales and marketing can engage. But how product and pre-sales can engage comes back to when a strategic customer or a huge logo kind of is looking for your product, you can work ways to provide additional visibility into planned feature items or work with the product to enable a feature in beta and personalize their buying journey and get their feedback from the beginning. This is to ensure that you're able to engage the product team earlier on in the buying process to make sure the prospect understand where we are on the product and how we're providing them with visibility on what they could visualize in the future as well, more from a product standpoint.
That's a great point as well, Aditya. I think it's super critical for in the role of pre-sales, especially to be able to manage the expectations of the product's capabilities, right? What the product can do today, what it can't do today, but also what it can and can't do potentially in the future based on the roadmap. And so I think being able to communicate that effectively and manage those expectations and it will help build trust if you do it in the right way. But you can also really quickly deteriorate your trust with the customer if you do it in the wrong way. So I think it is super important to get right. Really quickly for the audience, if you do have questions, we're getting closer to the end here, and we do have some time reserved at the end for some questions from the audience. So please drop those in the Q&A box, and we'll make sure to get those.
Absolutely, Eugene. I think that the part where we talk about the 80-20 rule consistently across the three stages, the discovery and solutioning and the final feedback, and how that kind of permeated to creating the right perception, understanding your audience, and earning customer trust. But I feel the place where pre-sales and product interacts is, and setting the right expectation of this part is probably the most creative part of the job. So that is something which covered in detail on the next slide and how this is done, right? So the three stages or three parts again is making sure how well you're available and the things which you can communicate during the overall final stages of the buying cycle. So you need to gauge and ascertain the preferred mode and time of communication with the audience on the prospect side. From the beginning, you can equip them with the necessary documentation, navigational help guides from even the first point of interaction. The ideal way to kind of save each other some time is to add a separate column for questions in the success criteria template, which I mentioned earlier. So each person on the prospect side, based on the type of user permissions or persona they are with, they can kind of document those questions, and they can tag the necessary pre-sales professional, get them notified whenever a new question is added to the template. So you can schedule a separate call to cover all these questions, and you can use email only in case of either it's a kind of a showstopper or an access related issue. So this will save you a lot of time. I would say that even having canned responses for email templates during your busy hours of the day can actually give you clear details on when you would be reaching out to them specifically. Kind of this is the best way to keep them engaged on any time. Second aspect is probably talking about new use cases, feature requests, and this is a common topic in most of the pre-sales discussion, the overall cycle, right? This is probably the most creative part of the job as well, because you try to understand the criticality of the feature to their business and also to this overall evaluation. And in some cases, the person asking for it. For any business critical request, simultaneously think about alternate solution, and also take a quick mental scan through the current and future roadmap items. Realistic commitments can be made using past data on the buyer journey and an implementation cycle by actually correlating that with the future roadmap items which you have planned. Essentially here, a lot of factors tie together, and this is where I was kind of mentioning that this is a really creative part of the job, where you understand the nature of account, the requirement and its market implications, and the overall impact on roadmap. This needs to be specifically worked out with the product team earlier on the buyer cycle to actually set realistic commitments that the team can deliver. So this is really critical and important. And this is where product and pre-sales plays a critical role. The next step for pre-sales is to document the user journey so far, right? And how this is done is to a feedback call, which is a mandatory checkpoint after the initial demos and proof of concepts, etc. The different audiences. You will know kind of where you stand on the overall evaluation. So this is something, when you have the feedback call, you can kind of present something like an account handbook, which covers all the details, starting from the discovery, the key audience details, user journey, success criteria, feature wish list, along with visibility into any post-sales implementation and support. So when this is being presented, it serves as an input to any business case or a document which the prospect might build to move the evaluation to a purchase, and also gives the perception that we are ready with the next direction. Most importantly, this can be used also used as a handoff document to post-sales teams for continued success of the customer and deliver the same level of experience you provided during the buyer journey. And this document can have details on maybe potential upgrades and potential needs which they need in the future that might be useful for upsell opportunities in the future as well. So while we are on the topic of working with product, we also spoke on making realistic commitments, right? So making commitments on calls or through emails with an arbitrary picture of the roadmap is going to affect the customer experience once onboarded or even on the long run. So this happens in a lot of cases, and that is why the survey statistic clearly shows that 50% of pre-sales are actually confident that commitment made during the pre-sales stage are actually fulfilled. This was one of the questions on the 4 to 5 questions which we did on a survey before we started this webinar. One way is actually to avoid this is to documenting the feature wish list in the customer buying journey or the account handbook which you're presenting on the feedback call. This is to ensure that you're on the same page and the prospect is also aware that this is being logged. Another method is also you can see if there is an ability to automate this using any integration you have with your roadmap or product management tool. It helps you take a quick glance of features that is currently being prioritized. Example, like Jira you can use. And this is to ensure that whenever a new request is made, it is automatically logged in and you have the product teams looking at it.
Yeah, this is great. I'm glad you make the points about, documentation and process here. I think, outreach, my team would definitely say that I'm kind of a process and documentation Nazi. I think, we have a huge emphasis on documenting the solution during the pre-sales cycle to help the customer understand exactly what they're going to get if they do move forward with a purchase. And it also helps the services team and all the downstream teams with implementation understand what it is we actually sold, right? It's not as detailed as a full-on, technical spec, but it provides a lot more context as to what solution we intend to deliver and onboard the customer with. So, I think that's the example that I can provide, but I think this is a really good point.
Absolutely, and one is to ensure that we are on the same page, and to the prospect at this point, you're providing visibility into how the post-sales onboarding is going to look like, because that is definitely a question that comes in. That is a strong question which comes in, which gives signal that the prospect might move into procurement if they're talking about how your onboarding is going to be. And if you're going to add this and document talking about your SLA and your onboarding process, I think that serves as a great guide for prospects and builds that confidence and trust to move ahead with you.
Yeah, right. And that's what it's all about, is building that confidence, making sure that they're fully comfortable that they're gonna invest in you and your solution, that they're gonna get the outcome that they're looking for, right?
Right. Yeah.
A lot of buyers have had challenges where they bought something and it fell flat and they've been burned, and so they want to avoid that. So the more comfort you can provide and confidence you can provide, the better.
Absolutely, yeah. And after the 3 critical stages are complete, moving on to the main part of where you have essentially achieved a great customer experiences, a stage where a clear trust is established between the internal champion on the customer side, and you are now perceived as a partner in the overall business relationship and from the prospect's mind. So this is the stage where the deal kind of materializes into a purchase, and there is a clear handoff to the post-sales team from your end. The experience and value delivered during the pre-sales stages sets the right perception for continued success as a partner in the post-sales journey as well. And you've already created that perception. This is a stage you can see if you can work with customer success and other post-sales team to talk about the continued positive feedback. You can work with the prospects and customer success teams to give clear information to customers' willingness to maybe add their logo to their website, maybe request for any case studies based on the use cases which you've already worked with. And those case studies might be applicable for other interested prospects as well in the future. Post implementation, you can also request for references for future prospects. So this, in certain cases, at this stage, the prospects might say that there is a background process to that. It may take some time, but you can get clear signals whether they would want to do this or not. When they do say that they want to give reference, or they're okay to add a logo to your site, or they're willing to do a case study with you, which means that it is at that point when they give that communication, it's a clear validation that you've provided a sound experience to them in the overall evaluation journey. So this is something you can clearly take away when you get validated at that point. So in overall summary, by engaging effectively with prospects and customers, every pre-sales function gets intricate visibility into the customer's business and their buying evaluation journey. This continued engagement will incrementally only enhance customer experience, resulting in lesser churn and higher customer lifetime value. So circling back to what this overall webinar was about is talking about this quote, and it's one of my favorite quote, and it's really apt for today's presentation. Building a good customer experience does not happen by accident, it actually happens by design. And today we covered how to design an approach that delivers exceptional customer experience through a software buying journey. A little bit on how this code and the design process and framework which I formulated is to talk also about the product which I work with. RFPIO is a cloud-based response management platform with industry's first AI-enabled solution trusted by some of the world's smartest companies, streamlining their response process, company knowledge, and responding with confidence to anything. A lot of Fortune 1000 companies use RFPIO service currently, and the notion of something like a queue branch in Salesforce, the insights derived from one of Todd Jantz's session, got me to thinking that there's a lot of work done on dedicated teams to ensure the front-end teams, that is the pre-sales team, delivered great customer experience to prospective customers who are evaluating the product. The relevance of RFPIO in relation to customer experience is its ability to equip pre-sales professionals with knowledge and automation to deliver excellence. And this may kind of range from generating automated and personalized templates for success criteria, and also for the user journey, also for logging and tracking feature requests from RFPs and through customer calls, making it extremely simpler for the front-end sales team to log them and make the overall journey much simpler. So,
yeah, and I just want to thank RFPIO as well for being a huge supporter of Pre-Sales and also Pre-Sales Collective, and for helping us put on today's webinar. RFPIO is a great solution, so I'd say definitely check them out if you're interested and need help with response management. Now let's move on to questions. We have a little bit of time, we're a little bit behind, so we may only have time for a couple, but I'd love to make sure that we at least try to answer a couple of these. So the first question, Aditya, is how does this discovering customization that we talked about play in a situation when the solution is being sold through a partner who owns the customer relationship?
Sure, I think that's a great question, actually. So in case of you have partners or resellers who kind of own the overall customer relationship, all the playbooks and frameworks and process designs, which I talked earlier, those can be shared with some of these, at least some of the best practices from these could be shared with the resellers and partners as well, enabling them to kind of adopt the same process and deliver the same level of experience, which you would provide to your prospects as well. So providing some aspects of the process design to the partners and resellers is definitely going to improve the customer experience. This is something definitely you can do for them. Any other thoughts you have, Yuji, on this specifically?
Yeah, and I think that the one thought that comes to mind for me is that, you know, ultimately, even though the partner may own the relationship, I mean, ultimately the success of you as a pre-sales person depends on you supporting that customer in the best way possible. And so that may mean injecting yourself and staying really close with that partner to make sure that they're following the same process, that they're asking the right questions, right? That they're doing the right level of documentation, whatever it is, they're positioning your solution in the best light, or you're partnering with them to make sure that you're delivering that customer experience jointly. And I think sometimes a lot of that burden, you know, does fall on you to make sure that you're bringing the partner along, even though they have the relationship. So, you know, I'd say that definitely lean in there where you can.
Absolutely.
it can make things more complicated, but it can also make things a lot better having that partner involved. So, but again, it may fall more to you as a pre-sales SC.
Yeah. To put a simple example for this question is look at the example of why McDonald's is successful. Even all their franchise businesses have the same number of sesame seeds on each of those burgers too. So that's how we need to set the expectation for partners and resellers to deliver the same experience to the customers as well, because essentially they are talking about your brand and your product and kind of talking about your values. So how delivering the same experience is critical too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I love the analogy.
Yeah.
All right, last question here. Can you speak a bit more about demo models? Are they different demo talk tracks or different demo approaches?
I would say it's a combination of both. Primarily, this is derived based on what the audience is looking for and how much time you have to deliver the talk track and flow. So this is going to be the different demo modes. It can be a menu approach, or it can be more like a Q&A type of model, depending on where the prospect is from and what the audience typically wants. You can have different demo models that works. I mean, I kind of name them how I coordinate the same with my sales folks specifically, but this is something you can have on your own. But the main point of difference on how you kind of segregate different demo models is based on talk tracks, the flow of talk track, and the flow of features which you're going to show, and the time which you have to deliver the same. So these are the three aspects you should focus on in creating different demo models.
All right, thank you, Aditya. And that's gonna have to wrap up for questions because we are short on time. I'm just gonna wrap up with a couple announcements really quickly. One being the Pre-Sales podcast. If you haven't listened to it yet, if you haven't downloaded it on iTunes or Spotify, it's out there. We run it weekly, and we have some really, really distinguished and experienced guests that have been joining lately. So that's been a lot of fun. Oh, sorry, can you skip the next one, Aditya?
Yeah, sure.
I cut out a couple here. And then if you could flip to the next one. The Slack workspace, if you haven't joined our Slack community yet, it's growing, and there's a lot of fun activities in there for folks, ways to connect through virtual coffee. We have some social channels, and then of course, a lot of discussion happening around how you can be a better pre-sales SC or a pre-sales leader as well. So definitely join the Slack environment. And last slide, I think here, Aditya. And yeah, that's it. I just wanted to say thank you so much again to Aditya for putting this presentation together and sharing with all of us his experience and insight. I want to thank RFPIO again for helping host us today and presenting this content for us today. And I want to thank all of you for being engaged, for asking questions, and for showing up and investing time in yourself to gain more knowledge and understanding of the world of pre-sales and how to do your role better. So want to thank everybody. With that, we will wrap and hope to see you on the next one. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Yuji.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.